territories.
There were 35 abstentions, 9 votes against. I'm just waiting for confirmation on which countries they include. But do you think that there was a reaction to the threat from the US to remember and make a note of who voted against them and potentially cut financial aid to those countries?
Yes, well, like you say, we're not quite sure yet who decided to vote no. These threats, on the one hand, are typically Trump-like, the bluster, the sort of, we're watching you type rhetoric. On the other hand, the US and Israel have both pursued public and private pressure on UN member states in a number of different situations, and on UN officials as well, when it comes to trying to kind of stymie or undermine or thwart various initiatives designed to hold Israel to account for violations of international law. So that, the existence or the level of that pressure is not new. It just had a kind of Trump twist, if you like, in this occasion.
What do you think about the comments by the US and by Israel that the UN is biased, that it's practicing double standards, and that this is yet another anti-Israel resolution?
Well, I mean, the reason why Israel has, or is the focus, or the reason why Israeli policy is the focus of sort of annual resolutions when it comes to the Palestinian question, is precisely because Israel continues to be in violation of a whole realm of international law when it comes to the question of Palestine. As I've mentioned before, with respect to the acquisition of territory by force, with respect to the settlement enterprise, with respect to the Palestinian right to self-determination, which is also denied. So in other words, the fact that Israel, year after year persists in maintaining those violations means that, and especially in fora where the US does not have a veto, like in the General Assembly and also in other fora like the Human Rights Council, those Israeli policies continue to be condemned for as long as they're being carried out by the Israeli authorities.
Ben, thank you very much indeed for that. Ben White from Cambridge there speaking to us about that vote. So just to recap, 128 votes in favour of the resolution, 9 voted against it, 35 abstentions. So that resolution to reject any decision to change the status of Jerusalem or recognise it as the capital of Israel has been carried. Let's go to Alajan Ayanla, who's in occupied East Jerusalem. So this kind of result very much expected, Alajan. This will be welcomed by the Palestinians as a symbolic victory.
It will be welcomed by the Palestinians. Keep in mind that this is actually a fairly similar outcome in terms of the vote back in 2012, where we saw the upgrade of Palestine from a observer state into a non-member state. More than 128 yes in this vote. 135 countries voted in favor of upgrading the status of Palestine back in 2012.
But the US ambassador, Nikki Haley, said, look, whatever happens, we have every right to decide where our embassy is, and we are going to move it to Jerusalem regardless. So, I mean, what is that going to mean in the future? It's certainly going to make the situation very tense where you are.
It is, and the Palestinian stance has always been that with this decision by the current U.S. administration to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, they say that the U.S. has basically taken itself out in terms of being a credible partner in the peace process moving forward. And Israel has been pushing very powerfully over the last 3-4 days to delegitimize this entire process. We saw them sort of embark on a very intense lobbying campaign to get as many countries as possible either to abstain or to vote against this UN resolution. In fact, the Israeli Foreign Ministry has sort of encouraged, or advised rather, a lot of its diplomats abroad to sort of encourage their host countries to abstain or to oppose this resolution. Basically, Israel is saying we don't want any public support to be shown on the floor of the United Nations General Assembly. But according to one senior official, we know that this sort of campaign embarked by Israel is going to have was likely to have limited success. And we saw that with the results, with over 128 countries voting in favor of this resolution.